Welcome to the Unreal Engine News and Community Spotlight. The latest episode in our virtual production podcast series has been released. In it, director Robert Zemeckis and VFX supervisor Kevin Bailey discuss what it took to bring the dolls in Welcome to Marwen to life. Listen to the 50-minute podcast or dive into our blog for an overview of their process, from digitally modifying live-action body parts to compositing to mocap. In just 2 weeks, we'll be kicking off the first UE4 Jam of the year, our winter UE4 Jam. Game jams are a great chance to put your dev skills to the test or try out new aspects of the engine you may be unfamiliar with. Also, you could win snazzy prizes from our sponsors. Be sure to sign up and stay tuned for more sponsor announcements leading up to the jam. Today's the last day for January's featured free marketplace content, which includes an audio bundle, foliage, environment, and animal packs, and a master material for creating a variety of progress bars. If you haven't snagged this month's asset, do so before they rotate out. And on to our fantastic weekly Karma earners. These lovely folks are jumping in Answer Hub and helping their fellow devs find solutions. Many thanks to Kairos, Shadow River, Jackie, The Batch, Thompson N13, Nebula Games Inc., Cheerer, Christoph Morva, Zucchini, and Evigme. If you'd like to see your name on this list, head over to AnswerHub and share your UE4 knowledge too. Now for our community spotlights of the week, we're starting with Piczle Colors from Score Studios, which released today on Nintendo Switch. In this puzzle game, you'll use the numbers around the side of the puzzle to work out how many blocks of which color should be painted in each row and column. The game comes with 6 color packs with 50 puzzles each. A futuristic sports action game, Spykebots, immerses the player into a high-octane matchup where they must smash, pass, and spike in a volleyball meets full-contact football event. You can grab up to 3 of your friends and start battling tomorrow with their release on Steam. And the final spotlight this week is a project called Amber County. Created entirely in blueprints by a solo dev over the last year, Amber County is a hybrid adventure that mixes puzzle and narrative elements. Live the mysterious journey of Stephen O'Hara, the blind detective that solves cases using his dreams. So go check it out for free on itch. Thank you for joining us for our news and community spotlight. Hey, and welcome to our Unreal Engine live stream. I'm your host, Amanda Bott. We have Sam Deiter, senior technical writer, with us. We also have Paulo Souza, calling in all the way from Brazil, newly titled technical account manager. And on his first ever Unreal Engine live stream, our newest community manager, Victor Broden. So
how's it going?
Super pumped to have Victor join us.
Excited to be here.
Well, since it's your first live stream, do you want to give a little bit of background on who you are?
Sure. I've been working with the engine for almost 5 years now. I started just making VR projects when the DK1 was first released. That turned into a turmoil of making a lot of games, VR projects. I was teaching for a little bit, and then did a couple contracts, did a startup, released a couple games. My last job was over at Oculus, so we might be doing some VR stuff in the future. And yeah, I think it's a quick brief of my history. If you have any questions, just hit me up on Discord. I'm there most of the time.
Tricking people with your name.
Right. Yeah. It's not actually LERP. I'm so sorry, everyone.
You've disappointed many of an internal people here.
Yeah, and they told me so.
But so this week we're diving into
Action RPG.
Yeah.
So we did a stream in the past on Action RPG, and that was to kind of let me take a step back. So the whole purpose of Action RPG was to give people who use UE4 kind of a breakdown about how the ability system works. The ability system that is demonstrated in Action RPG is the same one that's used in Fortnite and also used in Paragon. And the first stream that we had was basically to kind of give you an idea of how the ability system works. This stream is to break down a little bit more about how things inside of Action RPG work and kind of give you some more ideas of where we're going with this project, what we'd like to achieve with it. Paulo was one of the other people that was highly involved in the development of Action RPG. So this game was basically built as a basically, we have these things called Epic Fridays where you get a Friday a month to kind of do whatever it is you want. So it was originally built by the team down in Korea. Then priorities shifted, so they kind of put it off. Paulo dusted it off because there was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was like 4 examples in one GitHub resource that you would need to compile all together into a single project to show most of the functionality that we demonstrate in Action RPG.
Yes, something like that.
So this project was to help him just have one project that you can point people to, but also show how Unreal can do one-to-many. So this project right now works on Android, iOS, HTML5, Windows, Mac, Linux, a couple unannounced platforms, and it should be working on the consoles. I've just never actually put it on a console yet, but it should run on there, and we've made some improvements and some updates for it. So one of the things I want to show you before we jump into a lot of stuff is, let me expand this. So this is the Action RPG doc page. Originally, it just had these 3 sections right here. So it's talking about the setting up the ability system, balancing blueprints in C++, and then breaking down how the abilities work. Over the last couple of weeks, I have been able to carve out some time to add a bunch of different documents here that go more kind of on the content creation side of things. So we have adding a random amount of souls per kill, adding a pickup, migrating content, adding a new weapon, and adding a new potion. And each one of these are meant to show you a different aspect of the game. And they're set up in a way that basically it goes super easy for adding a potion, adding a weapon, slightly more complex, pickup, just a little bit more complex than those other 2, and then finally, I said that backwards, adding a random soul and then adding a pickup. Adding a pickup is going to be the most complex one. And this migrating content is just how I was getting content over from the Infinity Blade weapons packs, because I had to end up repeating those steps, so I just made another document for it. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what our current improvements are. So I'm going to move this guy over. Now, one of the things that Paulo did, and we're going to click on this screen right here, and I'm going to skip the intro. So first off, you notice that I have different controls here for my PC. The cool thing about this is when I go on mobile, I'll have mobile controls, so my UI down here will be slightly different. And then when I'm on PC, I'll have the PC controls, and it's probably a little hard to make out, but you can see there's like a left click and a right click, and like I believe it's spacebar makes me roll. Tab opens up the UI. But one of the coolest things that I think he did was this. Let me try to grab the edge of the window here. And so I'm going to make a UI really small or really big. Notice how the UI stays exactly where it's supposed to be, unless I put in some crazy resolution like that. The reason that this is so cool is that there's no longer a need for you to mess with any of the complicated UI scaling curves or anything like that. The UI will stay in place in relation to whatever resolution you're currently viewing the game on. This is awesome because if you've ever had to mess with the UI curves, you end up having to make a bunch of special entries for whatever weird resolution that you might not necessarily be scaling the UI to correctly, or you just missed a UI element. Now you have a bunch, or missed a setting, missed a resolution, and now you have your UIs just like all on top of one another. Let's see what else. So we've added a couple new weapons and potions. So I've got a pickup here, I've got a potion, and I've got a sword. Again, these are the results of the documents that I showed you earlier. And I've also went in and we did apply a little proxy geo and HLOD. Let me see if I can find, yeah, there's an HLOD piece. So you can see that, it's not there, and it's actually made up of all these little individual guys. And then as I go back, it will fade out a little too far back there. And you can see it made it one piece. This is good because on mobile, you want as few draw calls as possible. So what this is doing is it is non-destructively replacing those pieces in the background with one mesh and one material, making this piece, which is probably, I think, like 5 or 6 individual static meshes, into, again, one mesh, one material, which is one draw call, which is really what you want on mobile. Some planned improvements that we have, we want to implement PSO caching. So PSO caching is the new form of shader caching. There's documents that are written about it. We have the PSO data generated, just haven't actually written the code that compiles it during the intro. Can't think of the name of the word on the screen. Loading image?
Loading?
I don't know. I can't. It just like totally fell out of my head.
Loading screen.
Yeah, loading screen. There we go.
Yeah.
We also are going to look into doing something like local notifications for maybe an in-game event, possibly adding some social support and some procedural generation for the levels, as well as different enemy types and behaviors. Finally, so here's an improvement that is not going to happen, is going to be multiplayer. As it currently stands, Action RPG will never have multiplayer. I'm not saying that there might be some resources that allow me to do this. The reason that we don't have any plans for it is we made a decision at the beginning of this game due to time constraints to make sure that we got it out on time. We specifically didn't build this with multiplayer in mind. If we did, it would require a massive rewrite of how we are actually implementing the ability system to deal with things like replication and damage calculation, and we simply just don't have the time, and we didn't have the time when we were doing this to actually implement that. That being said, if you are looking for an example of how to do multiplayer, the best resource that you're going to have is going to be Shooter Game. That is going to show you the epic way to set up your multiplayer projects, so that's still a super, super valid resource for that. So, Paulo, do you have anything that you would like to add to this?
Sure. One thing that's coming up soon at some point is support for multiple translations, actually localizations. We're working on adding new regions, new locals to Action RPG. And I mean, finally have a sample project that implements the localization system in Unreal, so other developers can look at and use as a reference. We're not sure the language at this point, but I mean, since it's going to be used as an example, it's just a bunch of them, like 3 or 4. So just so developers can look at a proper example for that.
So we'll probably add English, bad English, maybe maybe Cockney.
Well,
Portuguese.
I can do Portuguese.
So, okay. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the potion. So one of the things I want to talk about the potion is basically this was all made using just simple data assets inside of Unreal. We can see that this potion right here, this is just a data asset, which is linked off of RPG potion item. And what this does is this is what controls what you see inside of the store and also sets the price and the amount that you have. So let me go back and hold on a second here. Pull this down so I can get this guy and run this in the selected viewport. So when I hit tab here and I come over to my potions, you can see I have the Death Door potion right here. All of the information that's contained here, the price, the little description, escape out of that so I can get back to this. There we go, is contained within this data asset right here. And let me close this guy and go to these. So we have this GA and GE. So the GA is the gameplay ability. I'm going to open him up, and we will pull him over here. So what this is doing is this is all of the, and I think I accidentally labeled these backwards. Hold on one second here. I just realized my mistake. Yes, I did. I totally labeled these backwards. Oh, well. So let me go back here and close this guy and open this guy back up. So what this one is doing right here is this is actually editing the, this is what I was looking for. I was like, where did it go? Keep going down here. All right. I'm sorry, what? this is what is controlling the actual visuals of the what's going on with this effect. So if I come here, this is the targeting. So right here is like the effects class to play, but this is the main thing that you want with this particular one, and it's the montage here. And, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So the montage, basically, I'm using the same montage that I use for the health and the mana potion, and I just simply slotted this in. I didn't actually have to change anything or make a new potion, make a new montage to put all of this in there. Everything that was done from this montage was literally what was originally in the health and the mana potion. That's controlled here. So this controls basically the visuals. And let me go back to my potion here. This guy, this is what actually controls the values that are applied to this. And those are right here. So we have our modifier. So our first modifier is the RPG attribute set health. And then we have the RPG attribute set mana. And what I did when I created this is I just duplicated the health one. So I just came here and I literally right-clicked and I duplicated it. Once I had it, I opened it up. I just added another element to the array here. And I set it to mana. And then here in my magnitude, which controls the amount, I set our scalable float to 2. I made sure that it was using the attack damage, because that's what we, even though it says attack damage, this is the numbers that we can use for basically whatever. And that is all I had to do. I just had to set this to 2 so that it matched what I was setting up here, which is 1. So this looks like I didn't update this build correctly. But basically, by increasing these numbers right here, we are going to increase the effect that's applied to the player. So this is supposed to give us back at least half of our health and half of our mana. That's why I increased these to 2, to give us a little bit more than we currently have. And then that's pretty much it. That's all I had to do. Now, one thing I would like to point out is, let's see, I'll find this guy in the content browser. So, see this items folder right here? It's very, very important. No matter what type of content you're going to make for Action RPG, whether it's a new weapon or a potion or a pickup or a skill or whatever, it has to go inside of this folder right here. If you try to put it outside of the items folder, it will not be able to be slotted into the inventory that you see when we come here. So when I come here, if I have it in that folder, I don't have to touch the UI in any way, shape, or form. It'll just automatically appear and be selectable right here within the UI. That's because we use the asset manager, and the asset manager relies on pass. So it's looking for items that are in the potions folder to add to the potion selection inside of the UI when the game is playing. This is why they have to be located in these folders. If you try to put them outside of the folder, it's just never going to work. You can see I have my weapons over here as well. That's the tokens is for the souls that you collect, and then you can see I have my skills here as well. So, Paulo, is there anything that you want to?
Yes, of course. That on the asset manager side, you can configure, you can set up your own folders that you want to search for primary assets for the asset manager system. So Action RPG, I think we just scan the items folder in any subfolder within it. But in your own project, you can basically set up that to scan any type of folder. It's important, and it's, if you want to use the asset manager, it's important that you take a look at how we did it, because we still need to implement some interfaces in C++, so the engine can actually load assets dynamically within runtime. So take a look at that, how it did it. It's really simple. It's just to create a base class that's going to respond to a simple interface, and then you'll be able to list your assets dynamically, even the game is already running using the asset manager. That's how we did with Action RPG. It was getting back to the effects. It's important to notice. So Sam used the attack damage curve table for the new potion item he was showing. It's also important to note that you can actually create your own curve table if you want. I mean, we're just using that curve table just because it was already there, and we were just trying to prove a point. But you can actually create a different curve table and balance and mix and match to the specific necessities of your game design, of the game that you're working. It's interesting because the system already offers that functionality that enables you to have not only crossing, not only making math buffs and debuffs based on the character level, or maybe the item level, or maybe you can have like items or weapons that can be upgradable. It's really up to the designer and the team who's working it, but the tool is there, and it's. Developers should definitely take a look on how to hook their game design ideas to it.
Yep. And again, I didn't want to make another curve table because that one did exactly what I needed to do. So you remember, the more assets you add, that's the more things you have to check in. That's just basically the more errors that can be introduced into your project. So I like to reuse as much as I possibly can. So let's go ahead. So we've talked about the potion. Let's take a look at the sword now. So the sword is actually even less assets. It is a weapon blueprint. So let me open this guy up. And you're going to notice it's actually just a, so we've got some weapons defaults here, but other than that, it's pretty much just a data-only blueprint. Now, if you do want to change the visuals for the weapon, you are going to have to come here, open this in the full blueprint, and come over here to the viewport. And voila, here's my weapon. It is very important to note that I have this capsule collision here. This is what is going to be used to basically figure out if you've hit something. So every weapon that you try to add to Action RPG would need this type of capsule component inside of it, or else you won't be able to do any damage to anybody. Now, one of the other cool things about this is, I'm going to click on the event graph, and notice I don't actually have anything here, but what I want to point out is that if I needed this weapon to do something, say it needs to like drip fire or blood or glow or anything like that, I could actually do all of that functionality here within this event graph, separate from the ability system, and it would just work. That's because this is a blueprint that the player grabs onto, and it's put inside of their inventory. So it makes it very simple for me to do weapon effects or things like that within this particular asset. The other thing I want to show you is I'm going to open up this guy right here. So this is our weapon sword. So you can see the weapon actor here is the BP weapon sword talon, which is this blueprint, which I had in my collection over there. And the item type is a drop down, so we can change it here. We have a weapon. I give it a name. It's sharp and it's dangerous. It's got an icon. It's got a price. These are the basically the count and the max level. And this right here, this ability granted, this is important because when I click on this, this is going to go into our sword. I'll pull this back over here. So making another gameplay ability for this sword is a lot of work. It takes a long time to make. It also can be very prone to errors. So to make something that's simplified, I just simply grabbed the existing sword animation and just put this as the new sword to use. This way it cuts down on the amount of assets I have. It also cuts down on the amount of errors that I could make. I also just literally had to come in here and say, you know what, I just want to use this, and then come here, play my game, and the sword actually, I'm going to hit tab to open up the UI. The sword is right there. So it literally just, it's been set up in a way where things will just work if you put them in the proper locations.
Right.
And it's just simply find out what do I do and where do I put it, where it's the proper location. Just following the folder structure. That's all you have to do. If you put things where you find them, so if I come over here and I want, I'm going to pull my my thing down here, you can see that I've got an axe, the fire axe, the hammers, the potions, the skills. I've got some swords here. All I have to do is just, if I want to do something like a different kick, I can duplicate this guy. And then I can come in here and on the duplicated one and just start, changing whatever it is that I feel I want to change. I can, let's see here. I can change the damage calculation on it if I wanted to. It's going to keep on going down. There we go. I could add another modifier on top of it to modify whatever damage it's doing. I can come here and I can change, make it a default attack or a heavy attack or whatever I want to do. Basically, this is going to, the default attack and the heavy attack, and I think it's default, medium, and heavy are just going to basically, one does like 100, one does 200, and I think one does 300. I don't know, it's been a little while since I've looked at the data tables, but this is how you control, the damage that it's going to be applying. But again, it's not very complicated to set all this stuff up. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to come back down here to my collections, and there we go. It's literally just these two assets right here that I had to make this. So the other thing I want to show you is a pickup. So let me open up the pickup blueprint really quick. And so you see the pickup. So in the tutorial, it's literally just add the little piece of ham. I did a little bit of extra work here. And I did a little bit. It looks kind of complicated. It's very simple. What this does is, let me pull this out into the level here, and let me pull this over. So what I can do is I can come down here and I can change the potion type to, say, mana, and then what it'll do is basically change it to this lollipop, and it'll allow it, to rotate. I can come back here and change this back to a health asset, and you can see it changes it back. But the real bread and butter of this script is in the event script. So what are we doing here? Well, we have this component on actor begin overlap. It's a sphere collision. So you can see there's a little sphere collision right here. And basically what I want to do is, when I collide with that, I want to set a slotted item. And what do I want to set? Well, I want to set a potion, and I want to set a potion type. So I want to set the health potion. I want to update the on-screen controls. So this will reflect that I've actually picked up the potion. I added a quick delay right here, because I was having some issues sometimes where it would actually not destroy the stuff, add the stuff before it destroyed everything. So this 0.02 second delay just makes sure that when I kill the light and I destroy the actor, all the other stuff has been done first. And that's it. This is literally the only logic that you need for this to work. So if I come here and go ahead and play, there we go. Whoops. And I walked over it, and you can see I've got it in my, what does that button say? I can't read it.
F11.
It's too tiny.
F11.
Yeah, let's go F11 here. The R key. So now I can do my potion. There we go. And I'll escape back out. And I can actually add multiples of these to the level. So I can change this one to a mana asset. I'm going to hit Alt-P on the keyboard, F11 to full size it. And you can see I grabbed the health one, and then I grabbed a mana one. And let's see, hit R, so I did the mana. If I come here and I hit tab, I can come over here to my health potion, which, I don't think I have enough money. There we go. And let me do this one more time, because I think, let's see, there we go. Yep, I did it now. But it looks like it might not have updated. I'll have to go back and have a look at that one. We've made quite a few updates to this project since it released with 420? Was it 420 or 421? I don't remember now. It's been a really long time. I think it was 420.
That sounds right.
Yeah. It was around 420. So, which brings me to another point. If you are using this, now you can totally use this as a basis to build your project off of. I wouldn't recommend that you do that, because we make some massive sweeping changes to this every single update. The UI, for the UI example that I showed you beginning, where I was expanding it and contracting it, like we completely, I shouldn't say we, Paulo completely rewrote how the UI functions. And in fact, let me open up this blueprint again. There were some other changes that were made where I actually had an entire other piece of blueprint logic that was over here that basically made sure that I updated the correct item type, the correct amount, because it wouldn't do it automatically. And there were just two nodes that, with some updates, I could actually remove those out.
Oh, okay.
So if you are using this to build a project from, I would never update it. Just, kind of dump over the top like most people will do when they update. They'll get the latest and greatest, and then, because it's going to break everything in your project. So you will have a very, very broken project. What you should be doing is using this as a learning tool to add new weapons, new potions, maybe you add new enemy types, or whatever your heart desires. figure out how the systems work with one another because you have an example, a complete example of how this all works together, and then take that knowledge and apply it to your project. Paulo, is there anything you would like to add about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree that you should take a look at the systems that we built for this project, how we use the ability system, how we made the inventory system for the character, and use as a reference. That's 100% agree on that. You can actually copy the code that we did. You can copy the functionality of everything, but try to integrate that on your own project instead of just trying to sync for every version that we release of Action RPG, because we're definitely going to break some things going ahead, some things that is going to be changed, because the idea for this project is definitely that we keep it as a example of some of the best practice that we want developers to use. So it will always be changing according to engine changes and development.
Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is, let me go ahead and play this again real quick, and we will do our nifty F11 trick here. I'm going to change this weapon really quick because I want to be able to vanquish my enemies a lot faster than I normally could. Oh, the scroll wheel is what now changes your weapon. So when I kill this guy, you see I only got one soul, but let's see. Okay, now I've got two, and then I got one again. So originally you were just being awarded one soul at a time, but that made progressing in the game extraordinarily painful. You'd have to play multiple times over multiple sessions just to get enough to even buy a brand new weapon, unless you did our nice little cheat over here and gave yourself 100 souls at a time. So to make things a little more interesting for people and also show how you can modify the base level class of something and then have those changes actually propagate up to other instances that are based off of this, I added the following logic to this. So what we have here is we have this spawn loot. And basically, this is going to spawn those orbs. Hold on, it's going to spawn the orbs, but we will, this is the location, this is the orb. And then what we do here is in the event graph, when it's destroyed, so when this character has been vanquished, we are going to basically spawn the loot, but we are going to give it a min and a max value here. So right now the min and the max are set to 1 and 1. And we're using a random integer in range. So we're basically saying, I want you to spawn a random amount of souls between 1 and 1 for the base level class. So it's always going to spawn 1. But as you progress, and let me pull up another character here. So let's see. Oops. This mouse is so sensitive. Let's see if I can find. So we'll do the NPC level 3. So this guy. Now, there's nothing in here, but you can see I have a soul min and a soul max. So it does between 3 and 5. So basically what I've done is here at the BP enemy character level, I have established that I want to be able to access soul min and soul max. And then I basically propagated these changes up through level 1, level 2, level 3. This way I can give, I do believe level 1 has like 1 through 3. Level 2 is like 4 through 6. And then what is this one actually? No, I can tell you it's 3 through 5, and then I think the big spider boss gives you 10 souls. But this is how you work. You should be working inside of your blueprints or your C++ code or whatever it is. You want to establish stuff inside of your base class for a number of reasons. One, for example, this function spawn loot actually didn't exist before. Through some refactoring, Paulo was like, hey, you need to put this spawn loot function into, or you need to take this out, we need to put it into its own function, and then we need to call that function. Well, because I had built it in this class, all I had to do was come down here, implement this, and then re-implement my spawn a random amount of souls per kill, compile my blueprint, and then my changes were propagated to all of my blueprints.
Right.
Also, the cool thing is that since I had already set the soul min and soul max up to 3 and 5, I didn't have to go through and reopen each one of my blueprints to do this. Now, in a project this size, that's maybe 20, 30 minutes of work. But say in a project the size of Fortnite, that's going to be a couple days, maybe even a couple weeks worth of work,
Yeah.
depending on how prevalent the changes are.
And you're more likely to miss that kind of thing versus.
Yep. Or you might do 1 through 3 and then forget about 4 because somebody came in and asked you to do something and you thought you did it and you moved on. So adding stuff in the base level class is exactly how you should be setting up all of your blueprints. If they're going to be, used as a base to build something else. And it's not to say that you have to do this with every single blueprint, but this is a good example of what you should be doing when you want to kind of have some base level functionality that everybody can use. And of course, you can get way more complex with this, but this is a good kind of, if you want to take your blueprint skills to the next level and you're not really sure where to go, this is a good project to look at because there is tons of things like this scattered throughout all of the various blueprints that are in this project. Paulo, do you have anything else that you'd like to add about this?
Yeah, I totally agree with on that. Blueprints is really something that was built from ground to be to help us on setting the data on objects in the game. So it's really, it's not only can add code, but it's really heavily used for data storage. And you should make good use of that. This kind of things that you do showing the inheritance, it's really useful for larger projects like that.
Okay, so
there was one small thing I wanted to add about the weapons. We had to do a minor change on the architecture from the version 1. So initially, the ability system used the player level to change the weapon damages, right? Originally, we just were tracking the player level. There's actually a variable, player level, in the character blueprint. We don't use that for anything because we don't have player upgrades yet. But that may be something that may come in the future, or maybe that's something that you want to experiment in your game. Maybe like coming up with a XP system that upgrades the player level. But we use that variable to change the damage of the weapons, and we had to make a slight change to allow weapons to have upgrades on this version. So now when you attack an enemy, the weapon itself has a level, a variable, and it uses that weapon level variable to pick the right amount of damage that it's going to inflict on the enemy. And then that's also makes it very much easier for you to come up with new kinds of weapons and new levels. I think that in the curve table it goes up to 10. We only use like level 1, 2, and 3. That's something really nice if you want to play around with this sample project. Looking at that.
Okay, so the one thing that you might be noticing that I don't actually have any documentation about is adding a new skill. And the reason for this is because adding a new skill, so skills are, for those of you who are not aware, and we'll do our little F11 trick here. I'll call it the Victor cheat.
It's default.
If I hit F here, you can see I do a fireball. Okay, so that's a skill. That's what we're talking about. If I hit tab here and I come over to my skills, you can see I have like a meteor shower one. Let me confirm that guy, and then I'll hit F again, and it's like this crazy AOE attack. Just lots of heavy damage. It's also costs a lot of mana. I keep doing it because I keep hitting the attack button here to show you. But the reason that I don't have any docs about this is because it's not just as simple as duplicating a currently existing asset. It requires new animations. It will require a little bit of thinking about the type of thing that I want to do. Like we have fireballs and we have AoEs, but what if I wanted to have one that was a fireball that spawned an AoE? Or I wanted the player to shoot a bow and arrow, or there's just a bunch of design work that needs to go into this, which that's a little subjective. So that's why we don't have any docs about this, because there is a whole bunch of other decisions that need to go in. You can't just add a skill to your game, because what if it makes the game super imbalanced? And that's just that's something that will happen, right?
Right.
Just, I mean, willy-nilly adding a skill to this, well, all of a sudden, why is anybody else going to use, if I have a fireball that spawns other fireballs that does, 500 damage, why am I going to pick any other weapon in the game to play with? Why don't I just use, basically, it's like a finger of God type of weapon. So that's not to say that you can't add additional skills and mix and match the current animations and things like that we have with the game to add a new skill. It's just we didn't document it because, one, we didn't have really time to come up with a new skill to test to make sure that it's not unbalancing the game as it currently is. But if you did want to add one, you can come here to our skills and you can see, so our fireball, this is one of the things to that I should point out. See, it has this BP ability projectile base.
Yep.
So this is going to be super important. So there's no blueprint logic in this. It is just our sphere capsule. So we got some projectile movement on here, the arrow component, a particle system, and some audio. If we come here and we open up our, let's see, is it a meteor? Yeah. So the meteor skill, which is the one that does the AoE, you can see this is actually GA skill base. So it's just based off of a different class. If I come to, let me see, there is, I think it's this guy. Hold on one second. Oh, let me pull over. What I'm looking for is basically on the fireball, there is a little input, and I don't remember which file it was on. But basically, when you're making a projectile style skill, you make your projectile, and so this will get slotted into, I think it's this guy, but I just don't see the, what's that thing called? BP Fireball. Let's just see if I can find it in here. And that is not...
Maybe the ability?
Is it the ability?
I think it's the fireball ability, yeah.
Okay. Let's... I feel so old and blind trying to look at all this stuff. Let me...
It's getting complicated with time.
Yeah.
So, player...
Well, you're still searching in skills. Is that where you want to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Skills.
Is it this one? The skill fireball?
Should be...
I think, yeah, okay, here we go. Yep.
GA player skill fireball.
So here it is, right here, the projectile class. So
Yes.
basically, this has got GA spawn projectile base, which is the blueprint, which is just slightly different than the melee ones. And the only difference between these two is that you'll see this projectile class input right here. It's the only difference. Everything else is set up exactly the same. It's just you need to make sure that you slot this blueprint, your projectile blueprint, into this location right here.
Yeah, the main difference between animation-only base skill and the fireball is that at the end of the, not at the end, but at the beginning of the animation, the ability spawns dead actor, and that's simply that difference. Instead of waiting for any sort of animation events, they're going to trigger the collision channels. They're going to apply damage. That actor itself is going to apply damage to an enemy when it hits it. So it's a slight difference. Works about the same, but I mean it's different anyway in the end.
It's different enough for us to call out because there are going to be. That is one other thing I want to touch on. I haven't tested all of these features that are in here, so some of this stuff could work, some of it could not work. If you do find something that doesn't work or something that's not working the way that you feel that it should, please let us know. And we can take a look in it and see if it is, in fact, maybe it's not hooked up. Maybe it's just here. The content is there, but there's nothing hooked up in the back end and the C++. Because this is not just, I mean, the ability system here is very, very complex. And we've really only kind of scratched the very, very surface of how complex you can get these. I mean, you can have this ability that you can have the player fireball skill do something like stack poison damage on somebody. Basically, if you're familiar with any type of MMO that has complex skills like EverQuest or WoW or Star Wars or any MMO period, this is a very, very, very similar system to the types of systems that would be deployed in those style of games, because a lot of the people that made those style games now work here at Epic, and that's what produced the ability system. Let me see, what else do we have here? That's pretty much all that I have. Let me go back over my docs real quick, my notes here. Yeah, that's a good rundown of everything that's going on here. So if Paulo doesn't have anything else to add, I guess we'll go ahead and start opening it up to some questions.
We got quite a few.
Okay.
I hope you're ready.
Paulo, you have anything else you'd like to add before we jump into questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. All right.
Cool. How would you make an equipped item change your stats, such as increasing attack power?
Okay. I do believe...
That's a tough one immediately.
Dive right in.
Isn't that under the weapon ability? The ability level, Paulo?
Yes, you could change the ability level. Sorry, you can actually change the character level, and then the character itself, when it initializes, it goes after this data table and apply it actually apply a default stats effect, and these default stats effects goes after this data table and gets the default mana and default health to the character. To add more damage, let's say, make the player more powerful. Yes, you would need to add some sort of multiplier to the damage that you're going for. For every weapon, you need to add some sort of multiplier, and then while you have this ability equipped, you basically will have to go to the weapon and say, hey, I have this ability, so you need to add this amount of damage, of bonus damage on your next attack, because I have superpowers now. We don't have that by default on our system. It's a little bit convoluted to add this kind of support, but that should be totally doable. I will go after actually looking at the blueprints for the melee attacks as an experiment. Look at how we apply the damage over there, and how we gather the actual damage in the C++ code, and try to hook your own variable for maybe bonus damage or something like that, and then activate these bonus damage depending on the status, depending if you have another ability or not. That would be the right way of doing it.
And then there's also on the weapon actor here, there's the ability level. And I do believe the more you increase this, the more damage it's supposed to give.
Yes. I'm not sure that if you increase this in runtime, it will apply more damage.
Yep, you read my mind. I'm not 100% sure if this will, if you could open this up and grab the ability level from the weapon _axe_2 generic, and then increase that at runtime.
If you do that, sorry.
I was going to say, or like basically ramp it up from 1 to 5 and then back down to 1. Sounds like it could be doable, but I've never actually tried that.
Yeah, it could be doable. I'm just not sure if the system is hooked up to update that live, but it wouldn't be like that complicated to go that path too. To just make it update for every hit that you try to make. Check the level of that weapon, and if it's higher, pick the right level, the right damage that's going to apply, and then you change it based maybe on a cooldown, or maybe on another item that is equipped to the character.
So I hope that answers their question.
I think so. You need to do a little bit more work, essentially. This one is kind of cool, and something I was wondering about too. How would you make a GE gameplay ability that takes special input, such as the first button press throws out a mine, and the second button press detonates it? And I was thinking that's probably like an event dispatcher on the mine itself.
Yeah. So, and Paulo, correct me if I'm wrong, because we were talking about this beforehand, because we want to add something where like, you know, the meteor skill right now, it just does it around you locally, but it would be cool if we could like have you move the mouse around or move your finger around and, you know, have it be more for like crowd control. So like I'm killing these people down here while I battle these people over here. Because it could be like an actual blueprint that you throw out into the world, that makes things a lot easier because you can add the logic for the inputs on that. So you could have it listening. You could have that mind listening for you know, right mouse button for detonation or something like that, which is, say, a little bit easier than if you had everything included in one ability. Like you opened up an ability and it had all that stuff slotted in instead of it being kind of modularized. I have found through doing this that the modularization of the blueprints, like the pickup, for example, that wasn't anything that we had planned. I just kind of built it in blueprints. But because the system is so modular and I can have access to all of the nodes that you would need inside of the, you know, that calculate the damage and update the inventory and all of that stuff, it's just a couple days of kind of messing around to do it. Paulo, do you have anything that you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, I would actually take a look at the fireball ability, because it actually spawns another actor. It's a little bit different, but you can go from there. It spawns another actor that has a constant velocity because it works as a projectile. But I mean, nothing requires that that it needs to have movement. It could be something like that you spawn on the level that just exists there. And once another actor collides with a collision sphere, then you can apply a damage effect to whatever actor that collided to it. It wouldn't be actually very different from the fireball. It's just that it's not something that that it needs to have a velocity. It's just something that's going to be in the level waiting for someone to hit it before applying a damage. Of course, that you need to make the targeting system. So if you want it, like Sam was explaining, if you want to actually position this mine kind of object in the specific places on the level, you need to come up with your own targeting system. And that will need to be a little bit of your code, but other than that, it should be totally doable, yes.
And I definitely see you doing the targeting system inside of Blueprint. I don't think you would need to go outside and do it in C++.
No way.
You just have to get your screen coordinates into world space. That would be the most complicated part, I think, of that entire setup, is figuring out the logic to go from my 2D screen to my 3D world.
Yeah, we have Unreal actually has some pretty nice functions for that kind of stuff. Some stuff that predates that comes from Gears of War, I think. Like when you try to find out what is going to be the trajectory of a grenade that I'm throwing, Unreal 4 still has some of that. So you should be able to hook up something like that, or maybe come up with your own targeting system for some sort of grenade or mine placement.
Yeah, there's a great function called suggest projectile velocity.
Yeah.
Which basically gives
I
you
I use that a lot, and imagine where it came from quite a few years ago.
Yeah, it's great for other things like a teleport trace or whenever you need an arc. Let's see here. This one is a little over my head, but we'll see if you guys can answer it. Attribute calculation flaw. It is not clear from source code the order, conditions, and parameters of events like pre-attribute change, post-gameplay effect execute, and so on.
That is a Ben Ziegler question. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that one. We can definitely contact Ben and get a more direct answer to that. But that is, I did not do any of the C++ code. Paulo, do you have any idea?
I have some idea about the importance of it. I kind of understand what the person's looking at. Yeah, we would definitely need to talk to one of our engineers, because they understand the underlying code below the code of Action RPG better to give us that answer.
Yeah, we'll reach out afterwards and we'll post it on the forum in case we could get an answer. So there was another question that's a little bit generic, but I thought it was good to iterate on. Can we use the assets of this game example in a commercial game? And the answer is yes, right?
Yes. Yeah. So this is actually made of Infinity Blade assets, the Soul Cave assets, the Infinity Blade characters, the weapons, and then I have gone through every asset and painstakingly made sure that we have the rights to not only put this out, but the rights to redistribute it. Because when you redistribute
fun
something
times
for
for
download,
Sam.
yes, this is a very because we redistribute stuff that nulls a lot of licenses. A lot of licenses say,
Right.
hey, sure, you can totally use this thing for free in your binary commercial project that you sell. Well, we don't sell binaries. We don't sell any of our learning stuff. What we do is we give you stuff that you can then use. That counts as us redistributing it, and a lot of free licenses strictly forbid that. So all of the content that is in this project can 100% be used in any other project, or if you really wanted to, you could make this a little bit different and actually put this up on Google Play. That's not to say that their automatic stuff will take it down for you. I've actually had that happen when I hosted this the wrong way. I put it into a different account, and it was like, oh, you're trying to take Epic Games' account. And I was like, no, I wasn't trying to do that. It was a mistake. I accidentally was in the wrong account and posted it on the wrong thing. So, but I have seen some people, one other version of this game released. I can't remember what the name was, really crazy, but it was basically the exact same version of the game, and somebody just released it to the store, which you're more than welcome to do. But you know, it's totally free for you to use this however you want in your projects.
And that goes for pretty much everything in the Learn tab as well, right?
It's everything in the Learn tab.
Do we have any plans to make the gameplay ability system to be blueprint setup, or will it always require C++?
So, yes, it is always going to require C++. The reason is because there are some very complex damage calculations that take place behind the scenes. So this is another thing that this project is great for. If you've ever wondered about blueprint and C++ parity, or maybe you don't understand what that means, or you haven't really gotten a good example, basically what that means is that all of the complex stuff, the damage calculations, handling the inventory and the UI, all the stuff that requires some heavy lifting in C++ is all done in C++.
Right.
Then what Ben did for us is he exposed certain things like, let me go ahead and open up, let's open up the pickup because that's got some stuff in it, I think. Yeah, this right here, set slotted item. Okay, this, and I'm not going to double click on it, and this make RPG item slot, these two nodes right here, if I double clicked on them, they would open up that source code inside of C++. So what this does is instead of having to have every single item hard-coded, this allows me to pick from this list right here, this enumerated list of this is a map or a potion or a primary asset or a skill or a token or a weapon. This means that I, as one of the designers, or Paulo as one of the designers, can start to use these nodes to build things that weren't designed at all. Like this pickup was not something that we designed, right? I just was like, I wonder if I can make a pickup because I have the ability to set the slotted item and update the icons. So like, I wonder if I can do this. And it took me about a day to get everything working the right way. The hardest part was getting the stupid icon to change. I could not get that to work for the longest time. But other than that, it worked. Like
Right.
and I was actually surprised at how fast I was able to get this to work, because all of this stuff has been exposed. So it allows me to experiment and do things that I normally wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
Paulo, do you have anything you'd like to add to that as well?
Yeah, a great example to that. If you look at any of our abilities, let's say a melee based ability, right, that we use for the swords and the axes and anything, you see that we have a C++, and that will be a node, a blueprint node that was exposed to C++ that it's called play montage and wait for event. This was something that was actually custom built by Ben Ziegler, which was the programmer, the C++ programmer in this project, because the original design for that was that we use a skill or some sort of attack is literally a montage, and at a certain point in the animation, run this blueprint code. Right. What Ben did for us was that he moved that into C++ code, and usually people think that we move stuff, we move logic to C++ to code just because of performance issues. But this is actually a pretty good case where for debugging and for project management reasons, it makes a lot of sense to move some of the logic to code, to C++. So it makes it easier for programmers to maintain and debug in the long run. Another great example of that is the inventory system. I designed the inventory system entirely using blueprints. So this inventory system that we have in the game now, I designed it. It was 100% blueprints. But Ben made the decision, and I agreed that, yeah, we should definitely move this to C++ because this is the exact kind of thing that a programmer we want to move to C++ because it's a little bit more manageable. When you, I mean, for a project to decide of action RPG, that will be 100% okay to keep that as a blueprint. But as you move into the territory of more complex projects, when you're talking about games like what we do, like Fortnite and Paragon, it makes it easier in the long run as the project grows to have this sort of very key functionalities in code and C++, because it just makes it easier to maintain, just makes it easy to debug in the long term.
So one thing I want to add to that, if we kick over to the screen real quick, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, but basically, so this is the sword, and I'm only actually showing you one combo right now, so it keeps looping, but all of these little sections in here, these are all how we're triggering things. You see this weapon attack? This is going to be doing the damage. One of these stops us. One of them makes us immune. Right? This one will block any incoming items.
Weapon attack is the one that actually runs the attack code.
Yeah, this one. So this runs it, and you come in here and you add a notify, and you can see I've got. Or I can add a state notify, and I think the state notify, yeah, because like the states are doing the trails. When he goes into slow motion, when he's doing a kick, we call the slow motion notify right here. And by combining all of these things together, and again, this is why I didn't set up a document about the developing a new skill, because there's so much complexity to what we currently have that adding a new one, it's just there are too many variables, too many knobs that you're going to have to fill in turn. And also, we didn't know exactly what other skills that we wanted to add to this particular project. We didn't know if we wanted to add, a bow and arrow or something like that. But with that said, it is easy for you to come in here and you could say you really like this, but you don't want the trails. If I can find them, and I say this now because I found these earlier, but now I don't remember where they are. You can actually just disable them from here. I think here they are. Yeah, there's one. There's that shield I was talking about. So this will actually invoke a shield on the player so that they don't get damaged by their own attack or something like that. Let me see what else. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like if I wanted to get rid of the trails, I would get rid of this guy right here. I don't want to do that because I'm not sure if I delete that if it will crash or not, because it's still playing, and I don't want to have to open everything back up again. But yeah, that's this right here. It looks super complicated, and I can go to the other. But this is the bread and butter of all of the abilities. Everything that has, as we mentioned before, everything was built using the montage. And this is how pretty much everything is set up and done. It's where the damage code runs. It's where we make sure that the player can't be damaged. He has a shield but it's also standard animation notify. This isn't something that's new or unique. This is just how you use the anim notify system within the animation montages. So you will find this used in a lot of video games. A lot of people use these notifies to do things like footsteps, so sounds or particles, that come up for when, like some dust particles or something are the more common uses for this. But that doesn't mean that you have to use it specifically for that.
And it's an easy way.
Yeah, that was. Sorry.
Ahead, Paulo.
That was I was going to say. And and that's why some of the stuff is still in C++ because they're very customized to the kind of use that we did for the project. It doesn't. We're not saying that you have to use montages for your game or to use the ability system. Is that more like because in action RPG we had to use both, and that's why our implementation is so custom. And because games are very, very different from each other, that's probably why we're not sure yet. That may be something that may change in the future. But that's probably one of the reasons that the ability system that is so complex, it's going to be kept a little for a while under C++ control. I believe those are one of the reasons for that.
And just commenting and kind of looping back around, the docs actually do a pretty good job of explaining
Yes.
the
So
C++ versus
let me pull this
blueprint
back
usage
over
in
here.
the system.
So we have the building C++. Let me click over to this page. So this is going to break down basically what the code overview is. It goes over all of the header files, which you can find in each of the H files. It talks about our inventory and asset management. So here we get a description of what weapons, skills, potions, and tokens are. Now, before I get a little further into this, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is just a text overload. What am I going to do? This document and this document and this document are all aimed at C++ programmers. So if you're an artist or a designer, by all means, have a look at this. Don't feel bad if it just goes completely over your head. There's not a lot in here that you really need to be concerned with. We do have a breakdown basically of everything that we've kind of explained today is documented in these. So like attributes and effects, melee abilities, skill abilities, and executing abilities. Each one of these documents is going to break down at a very high and a low level exactly what this part does. And these were actually written by Ben Ziegler himself, the guy who wrote the system. I just did the copy on them, make sure that they, didn't say anything too crazy or use things that don't translate very well into other languages. But other than that, this is exactly what he said about the system. So if you want more in-depth information than what we're providing today, these are the docs that you want to look at.
You did mention earlier, we were talking last week, that there was an update coming to the documentation as
Yeah,
well.
so that is these guides right here. We didn't have these before. These are brand new. So the adding a random soul, adding a pickup, migrating content, adding a new weapon, and adding a new potion. These are all brand new docs. I just wrote them like a month ago. Actually, right around Christmas time is when I wrote them, and I just got them into the CMS. And these go to kind of... I wanted some more docs for artists and designers because while you could get a lot of information from the docs above, if you didn't have any blueprint knowledge or C++ knowledge or just limited blueprint knowledge, you wouldn't really get out of them what you needed to get. So I wanted to give people who didn't come from a coding background like myself, something that they could, start small and kind of work up to. If I was doing this and looking to start something brand new, I would do, again, I'd do the potion document first, followed by the weapon document, and then adding a random soul, because this actually has less steps than this adding a pickup. Adding a pickup's a little bit more complicated, but this right here, this one, and adding a weapon is actually one of my favorite ones, because what this will allow you to do is, say you create a weapon in Maya, it's your first weapon. All you have to do is just export it as a skeletal mesh, slot it in there, and boom, you have a weapon. Like it's that quick to get it in there, get it in your player's hands, and see it being used. So these documents are aimed more at getting you that kind of quick path to success. So it should take you maybe 30 to 40 minutes to go through it and actually get it working. And one other thing I'd like to point out, all of these documents, you can see everything already exists inside of the game. So if you are trying to follow along with these, you are going to want to modify the name a little bit to make sure that it is slightly different, than what currently exists in there. You're going to get a naming conflict. And I did that just so that you would have the final result, because it really sucks when you're building something and you're following the tutorial and you're new, so you don't necessarily understand everything and you have nothing to look at to see, right, like, wait, where did I go wrong? What did I forget? and my version versus what they had. So I wanted to give everybody a version of this that was completely done,
Yeah.
so that you'd have something to look at to kind of, give you a little bit of guidance in case you were wondering, where you went wrong or something like that.
And when will they receive the updated project that you're currently demonstrating?
This is going to go out in 422. So I'll update it
422.
on all the stores. I'll push that out sometime, hopefully before before GDC. Yeah.
Release of the preview
Yes.
and the full release then, yeah.
Yeah. So this already got pushed up to the release branch, so it's in there now already with actually everything that you see here today. Everything that's in here, the pickup, all that stuff is in the 422 release branch. I've already sunk it and checked it out. Everything's working. So you will get this in the next update, unless something happens.
That's great. In terms of tracking version changes each time Epic updates the Action RPG sample, is there a version number somewhere in the project for people who might have several copies of it?
That's a good question.
You can hover over here on your top of any Unreal Editor project, and you'll see what version you are. You can see like this is UE4 dev documentation. Was built on January 24th with version 422.0, and I'm not sure what the rest of the numbers mean. I think it's the CL that I pulled it from.
I think they're asking about the project itself version numbers. So they probably have like make it easier when they want to, even though we recommended that you don't do this, people still want to do this. They still want to update their own projects by syncing back the new stuff from Action RPG. I'm not sure we support that.
You're gonna have a bad time. It just,
yes.
We didn't build the game with that in mind because so the other thing, this is built like an actual game. This came from a prototype that somebody made that we took, and because it was all built in Blueprint originally. So we took this project that was a prototype project, we removed the expensive calculations from Blueprint, put them into C++, and we are slowly iterating on this as you would with a real project. This is as close as you are going to get to looking into somebody else's development at a professional studio, other than working at a professional studio and working on a video game. It might be a small project, but this is totally something that a two-man team could make.
Yeah.
So, and one of the core tenements of development is when you are in production, you do not update your code base unless you need something that means that your game can't ship, right? Say there's an update to Android or iOS, which you have to take this update or you will not be able to package your game for the store. That's the only time that it's appropriate to take another version of the engine. And even then, you only take a very specific change list or multiple change lists to give you that explicit functionality. I have never worked in a studio ever that has made it halfway through production and just said, hey, you know what? We're going to take the latest and greatest because, we've got some time to kill and we want some bugs to squash. So,
well, so some studios do that. They usually,
my chagrin.
Yeah, they usually never ship the game. But anyway, what I would say in regard to versions, we could tell that you can tie Action RPG builds, Action RPG versions to engine version. We've been trying to release updates for every major version of the engine. So Action RPG was released on 4.20. I'm not sure. I think we skipped 4.21. So we
made some updates to it, but not a lot. It was some maintenance stuff and a little bit of refactoring, but there weren't massive changes to it. 422 though.
Yeah, 422. It's a different story. We did quite a bunch of changes to it. So yes, I would tie to every major engine release. If you want to say that, Action RPG 420, Action RPG 421, Action RPG 422, yada. But just reinforcing what Sam was saying is that there's one thing that you find out with game development is that we've been trying to build Action RPG in a way that is the most professional possible, or the closest to what will be best practices in game development using Unreal Engine. The thing is, when you're trying to make a game that's not only going to be a sample project or not only going to be as an example, but you're actually trying to ship something, sometimes you have to allow some things that are not necessarily best practice, but are there to make the game so the game is actually shippable, right? So we can actually go to the store, so we can actually fix a bug, and it's not going to be like the best way to fix something, but I mean it's the way that we found at that moment and that we had to use it because we didn't have time. And these are the targets, and these are the kind of things that we want to change with Action RPG. That kind of stuff that it's not necessarily best practice, but it is there just because we can ship it. This is the exact kind of stuff that we're going to change with time to make the project, all of it, showing what will be the best practice for something. And those are the points that if you try to sync an older version of Action RPG to a newer version, it's the exact points that you may face some bugs and issues that you have to fix yourself.
Well, one of the ones that we found was, and I had never tested this, but you couldn't, if you didn't have a weapon in the first slot in your inventory, and you had one in the second and the third one, you'd never be able to select the weapon in the first slot because there was a mismatch in the array. There was a map, so basically the inventory was looking for slot 2, but it could only see slots 3 through 5, and there was no slot 2, like it just didn't exist. So we ended up having to put in a hack to remap the inventory so it got the right number in the array to get it out for 421. And then we actually redesigned how that system worked once we realized that there was a bug there. So this is exactly what Paulo was saying. We've made this in the best way that we can, but somebody always does something that we never think of. And then, oh, well, we've got a bug now that we need to fix because this thing happened. So now we have to kind of scramble to fix it. And these are just, this is how game development is. This is how it goes.
Just before we move on, a thing that you're going to have a hard time if you try to sync from a newer version of Action RPG. When it comes up, when 422 comes up, we quite literally change the way that we do the on-screen controls, the on-screen HUD of the game. We changed almost everything. For us to add the support for the PC-only interface that Sam just showed you, we had to change a lot of stuff. And then you have a hard time if you want to just to sync 422 to a project that started on 421. So it's just a heads-up note for the ones who still want to try this.
That's a good note. Live, learn, and do again.
Gonna have a bad time.
Would it be better to have individual weapon-based class, so ranged, melee, etc., or is it better to have a single base class that all the weapons pull from?
So, that's more like a philosophical question than like you should do it this way or the other. There isn't a whichever way you pick out of that one isn't going to affect, performance or something like that. It's just going to affect your ability to update your project. I personally would just have one weapon-based class because that means I only have to fix a bug in one location and then it can propagate up to everything. If I had a base class for melee weapons and for ranged weapons and for special weapons, that's 3 base classes that I have to then make sure that bugs are fixed in. It's 3 base classes that I have to test for. So that's why I prefer to just have one base class. But it's not to say that you couldn't do it that way, but that's more of a philosophical kind of process question than a, what's the word I'm looking for, requirement of development for this project.
Yeah, more importantly is that you try to plan ahead, try to at least write down some notes of what kind of features our game is going to have, and then pick the right architecture depending on your plans for the game for the future.
Is it viable to use gameplay event objects for damage executions rather than using a dummy attribute?
That I have no idea. I did not work on any of the attributes. Paulo, do you happen to know the answer to this question?
Gameplay. Okay, sorry. Can
Is
you
it
say that?
viable? Is it viable to use gameplay event objects for damage executions rather than using a dummy attribute? And there's a little note. Given their magnitude field and ability to attach secondary objects for information.
Hmm. I'm not 100% sure.
We'll get back to it.
But yes, I think it is. An ability is, I mean, for one to execute an ability, and by that I mean for an actor to execute an ability, it basically just needs to have an ability system component, and it should be able to execute, try execute. That should be the right wording. Try execute in a specific ability that it is equipped at that ability component. It's not very different from that. So it should be, but I'm not sure.
Let's see, how much time we got? We got a little bit of time for a few more.
Yeah. Can you have these assets interact with the Niagara module?
So probably. I haven't tested Niagara for this project at all. I also am not sure that Niagara in its current state works. It might work on mobile, but I don't know if it's been battle tested or not.
Right.
And because this is a mobile-centric game, we did not do anything with Niagara. However, since going from Niagara to, going from Cascade to Niagara is going to be a big thing, I am going to do, once it becomes a little bit more mature, do a guide that shows how I take all the effects that are in this game, port them from Cascade to Niagara.
Oh, perfect.
So that you can kind of see how I went from one to the other and give you some examples as well.
Right.
But
That'd be
I
great.
don't have any idea when that will only come when Niagara is more feature complete and ready to be used on mobile devices. And that, I mean, I need like GPU particles to work. There's a lots of things that are in the plans to be working. They're just not quite there yet. But once they do get there, I will definitely be taking care of that.
Perfect.
Or basically when it's done.
Yeah, when it's done. When it's done.
It will be. Is the version of gameplay ability system similar to the one used in Fortnite?
That's a good question.
That's a hard
Yeah.
question to answer because, one, I don't know enough about Fortnite's ability system. I have been told by a lot of people on our gameplay framework that what we did in Action RPG is based off of the same code. So while it is not going to be a one-to-one match, it is in a similar ballpark to how it's actually architected. I would say that the
Yes.
architecture is the same, but the execution is custom to us. But if you wanted to know more about the gameplay ability system and how it was built, or I should say how it was architectured to include everything, having a look at that would give you a good idea of that. But again, there's probably a lot of custom code that it was in either Fortnite or Paragon that we don't have. And before, when I was talking about too, there's a lot of stuff in there that is either not hooked up because we never tested it, so we don't know, or it is hooked up and we just didn't need to use it. So, and it's quite extensive. It is a very, very, very extensive system. This isn't a like just something that somebody kind of threw together. There was a lot of thought and a lot of time and a lot of really, really talented engineers here at Epic who've worked at other studios like BioWare. I forgot the name of the studio that made EverQuest, but I know that BioWare, for example, is one of our gameplay programmers came from there, and he built systems like this there.
Yeah.
So this is very similar to any type of system that you would see used on a major AAA title.
Right.
It's an engine within an engine. Engine to do that sort of RPG kind of games that need really, really complex interactions where you need to check, I have an ability and I want to apply this ability to another player. What are the abilities that this player have? Does it have any ability with a certain cooldown? So let's say like you can literally, I don't want to name names, but it's sometimes called as MMO engine. Even though without all the online aspects of it, it's literally made to build these kind of complex games that you need this kind of very complex interactions that you see from an RPG, right? So it's a very powerful system. If you're going that path, if you're going to make that kind of game.
Awesome.
Each project is its own. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like Paulo mentioned earlier, sometimes you have to make specific decisions to the project, even though you have a nice framework to build upon. I think that's all the questions we gathered that I know that you guys can answer.
We gotta wrap it up for this week.
Okay.
Feel like there's loads of information, so thank you for joining in this week and for
Thanks,
calling in,
Paulo.
Paulo.
Paulo just
Thank
got off
you.
the plane.
He's
Just-
going for
just left here.
distance.
Yeah.
As champion. So yeah, this is all incredibly valuable stuff, and obviously there's a lot of questions around it, and even more that we didn't get to. So we can always, if some of these are valuable, or if you feel like you can answer some of these, maybe we can pull them together. And
Yeah, let's pull them together. We'll see what we can answer. Because some of these questions might also, as we progress, they might not matter anymore because we went away from what this question was targeting at.
Right.
Because we are trying to update this with just anything and everything that developers come and ask me questions about. We're trying to put that into this project. So you have some docs, but you also have a hands-on example.
Right. But yeah, so we'll try to toss those over to you and follow up on the forum thread, so then it's something you all can come back and reference and chat about. Real quick, I've tossed the survey link in chat, so if you have feedback for us, whether it's letting us know how we've been doing on the stream, what kinds of topics you'd like to see in the future, or any additional comments or suggestions you have regarding UE in general, please fill that out. It's really helpful, and we pick from, if you opt in to give us your email address, we'll purely use it for the sake of raffling away a single t-shirt from that list. So if that's something you're interested in receiving or having a chance to, let us know. As always, check for your local UE4 meetup groups in your area. Meetup.com/pro/Unreal Engine. We'll find you lots of rad folks that are making games and doing cool stuff in your area. I know we had a lot of groups participating in Global Game Jam this last weekend, and it's a great way to find other people to help answer your questions, or or you can start your own if there isn't one near you. I'm going to talk about spotlights a little bit, where we find them.
Oh, yeah. Please go to the forums, the release channel, as well as work in progress. It's the main place we go to look at. But you can also link just your ArtStation or on Discord. It's a little harder to filter in there because sometimes there's a lot.
It goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah, forums is definitely the best spot. And please provide us with high quality screenshots, because that's the best way that we can show your project in all its glory.
Definitely. And if you were watching, we had the 5-minute countdown. That was an example of it was a project called Boxy. But if you take 30 minutes of your development and squash it down to a 5-minute intro, we can then email that to us at community@unrealengine.com and let us, shoot us your logo, your studio name, game name, things like that, and we can include you as part of our countdown before the streams. And it's always fun to see the
Yeah, I was actually
We were enjoying
mesmerized
it.
by the last
Yeah.
one. It was pretty cool.
Everybody gets really enthralled. We're all really quiet before the stream starts, just like staring at it. So.
It's just like a kind of awkward silence, but it's not because we're all like staring at the one monitor that's down here.
Yeah, it's pretty wonderful. But yes, be sure to follow us on social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, on Twitch, obviously every week. And we will see you next week. Thank you both again very much for joining us.
Not a problem. Always enjoy being on the stream.
We will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye, guys.
See you, everybody.